What's going on?
Hello.
This is Alex Wilder, and you're watching Wild with Wilder. Now, I thought we'd branch out a little bit and have a brief Star Wars talk about one of the most interesting shows on television, the Book of Boba Fett. So, we're going to call this a full on spoiler review for the Book of Boba Fett all the way through episode 6. So, episode 6 is the latest episode of the Book of Boba Fett. This is going to be a full on spoiler talk about the show, about how I feel, and about a lot of the surprises that have happened. So, this is your warning. Let's go. So, I have a lot to say about this show. The Book of Boba Fett, it kind of became my favorite television show as for what's airing really quickly, like almost overnight. Now, I don't know if it just has to do with the nostalgia factor, but I really don't think that is. I think that it's doing something in such a correct and right way that a lot of the other television programs don't. I think that when it comes to just the whole Disney lineup, Star Wars is doing television 1,000 times better than Marvel is doing television. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but we'll say it's 2-1. I think that the Star Wars television programming, as far as their live action content, is the zenith. This is the height of heights. The same when Daredevil came out on Netflix and it was basically perfection on screen. The Mandalorian, spectacular. And the Book of Boba Fett on top of it, it's just elevating it to an even higher degree. Now, one of the things that's so interesting is with The Mandalorian, you still have the character of Baby Yoda, aka Grogu. And he kind of allows that kind of young side of the self to be connected to the show. But Book of Boba kind of skews a little bit older. So I just can't get enough of this show. And I just think it's one of those cool things that has kind of stepped into the pantheon. When I watched the first episode, I want to say there was a couple of pieces where I was like, I don't know, big rubber monster popping out of the desert with 12 arms. Looked a little claymation-y to me. But that was really the only moment I ever had one of those I'm thinking about how they produced the show moments. Like, the second episode was spectacular, and the third episode was even better. And as it just kind of went on, the show just continues to elevate. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm wondering what's going to happen. I'm putting my phone down fully. I'm not even thinking about somebody calling me or texting me or what I'm doing in what app or the VV app or anything like that. I am focused intently on the show. And it's great because it truly is Star Wars. It just feels right. Now, Boba Fett had kind of expanded out into this thing that was kind of greater than the sum of its parts. George Lucas said that he had no intention of Boba Fett being this humongous character. But when you throw in a bunch of random characters on the screen with varying personalities, designs, and style, his just rolled 3 sevens and he came out with this really interesting character. He says that he thinks it's the helmet that makes him look so cool and draws people in. And you know, I'm inclined to agree. When they started expanding beyond, you know, just the look, oh, it's Mandalorian armor, and then the Mandalorians are this whole race of people. Well, now you have a character with some depth. And inside this show, you know what? Let me go back real quick because I really want to say this. They did it really kind of correct. because you could have done the Book of Boba Fett first, because the story basically picks up right after he falls into the Sarlacc pit at the end of episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And, we think, oh, that's the end of Boba Fett. But no, he actually comes back. He returns from that. And they do it in such a really cool way. He kind of drags himself out of the muck, ends up having to live with the Tusken Raiders. But they came out with Mandalorian first. Now, unless you had watched a show like The Clone Wars or played any of the video games like Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, the Mandalorians really don't have much weight for you. So what they did is they did this cool Lone Wolf and Cub style show with him and Baby Yoda, i.e. Grogu. And that all of a sudden, now we care about the Mandalorian as a character. And when Boba Fett comes into play, now we also have the emotional capacity to care about them both. The Mandalorian is not going to get overshadowed by Boba Fett because we had like this long, extensive trek with him as a character. So let's kind of keep going. Ming-Na Wen is probably one of my favorite action star actresses for the small screen. She just feels tough and feels strong, and I love seeing her on screen on this show. Of course, she was awesome in Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought that was a lot of fun, especially the first, really the second half of season 1 is when it started to get pretty good, and then season 2 and 3 were just fantastic. And we also love her from Mulan. Now, she's in this series adding that kind of toughness, kind of like, I am here to just dominate attitude. And I think it's really great. Now, Disney is good at hanging on to this talent, or maybe it's Marvel in conjunction with Disney is really good at hanging on to the really good talent that works for the shows that they're trying to do. I think they have done a fantastic job with the casting. I see her on screen. I feel she's believable. I like what they're doing with this. And it's crazy because I didn't really feel the need to talk about television or to talk about movies in any capacity on this show. I thought it would be just kind of to the back burner, but I'm get so like excited when I'm watching the Book of Boba Fett because I just think they do a phenomenal job. It's some of the best storytelling that I've really come across in a long while in the speculative genres, especially. So previous episode, because I just finished episode 6, I want to get to that. I don't want to be stuck and do like every single episode by itself. Because I want to talk about how we got to this amazing episode and what it did for the Star Wars universe and for Star Wars fans in general. So the previous episode, they just decide to take this crazy left turn, and it's a bonus Mandalorian episode picking up from where he left off. So it's not like there's a new season, but you realize they used an entire episode of the Book of Boba Fett just to introduce the Mandalorian to this audience and bring him in naturally within the storytelling. They showed actually where he left off, so we don't get this sense of dissatisfaction as viewers of, oh, I wonder really what happened, how did he get here? So we get him picking up with this dark saber and without Grogu and kind of wondering what is he really going to do next. And it really hit home for viewers of both. Now, if you haven't seen The Mandalorian, you can still watch this episode, and it's good enough that you're going to want to go back and watch both seasons of The Mandalorian, which I think are spectacular. And it will kind of further expand the Star Wars universe. What's so great about what's happening in the Star Wars television landscape is the universe are really starting to feel expansive the way they used to feel in like my imagination and in like the books and probably in the comic books, but I haven't really read any of the Star Wars comic books. Now, at the end of The Mandalorian last season, it was really cool to see a familiar face. And keep in mind, as I said in the beginning, we're spoiling all the way through episode 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. So you already know where I'm going with this as you have watched the episode, I'm hoping. If not, go back, finish the episode, then come back and watch this. So we remember how we left off with Luke Skywalker and how happy we were as fans to see him in his previous endeavors, but seeing him as we had imagined him being in the books. I'm thinking of the courtship of Princess Leia. This is how I pictured him. That is probably one of 2 Star Wars books I've read, and that's the one I remember the most. But him wandering through the woods, him actually being a Jedi master, a trainer, which is what we imagined he would be doing post-films. Like, we spent so much time with Luke Skywalker that when in the previous movie we don't really get to see any of him in his moments of the glory days, of mastery, of actually being a Jedi master. And they brought it into this show. Now, what's crazy about this is The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, I kind of put them in the same like book series universe. Like if you're reading like Brandon Sanderson novels, and not Brandon Sanderson, what's a better example? Joe Abercrombie novels, and you read the First Law, keep hitting the microphone, you read the First Law trilogy. Now, then he writes another book called Best Served Cold, which is in the same universe but with different characters. But then there's another book called Heroes, which is in the same universe but with different characters, but there are some characters that overlap. That's what The Mandalorian feels like. The Mandalorian is the main series, maybe the Book of Boba is an auxiliary series, but it's in the main universe and it actually feels like it fits. So bringing in those little touches, it almost feels like this is real Star Wars. This is Star Wars as it felt when I was a very little kid and I was watching the VHS tapes that my dad had recorded back when they aired Star Wars on TV without any commercials. So this feels super cool, and it feels interconnected and big and expansive, and it feels a little bit like a Western again. And when they brought in Kate Vane, that was brilliant because it gives validity back to the community. And what I mean by that is, hey, you watched this show, you watched Clone Wars. Well, here's a fun little Easter egg payoff. That's not even an Easter egg. He's integral to the story. So this character is now fully realized. He's back to life. And now you're going to get to see him in live action. So you know we're putting our weight behind him. So it's like, yeah, all the time and energy you spent in that world watching Clone Wars, it's paying off. It feels good as a fan for them to see this and for them to have him so well done. And talk about entrances. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat for this entire episode. And of course, you know, linking him back to Ahsoka and Clone Wars, and then her turning to him being like, oh, you're just like your father. You feel a sense of satisfaction with this series that there's almost a real love, a shared appreciation of Star Wars as it existed when the fans didn't have the movies, when we were just kind of hanging on to the really good stories were in Clone Wars, or the really good stories are in the books, or the really good stories are in video games. I love how it's integrated, and the history that we kind of have developed is not really being ignored. That's part of the reason why this is so satisfying. Jon Favreau, of course, he gets blockbuster style storytelling. He gets why we like it. He doesn't leave loose threads on accident, and he really is able to say, well, it could be some random Padawan hanging out with Luke, or some random assistant or some random master hanging out with Luke, but why? When it could be Ahsoka Tano, played by Rosario Dawson. She's available. We have the funds. Let's do it. And as a result, you get something cool like this. Really satisfying stuff. And I think that it speaks a lot, because Luke Skywalker was our main character back when I was young. He was our way into the Star Wars universe, the first protagonist that really allowed us to experience things like the Force, like Jedi, like starships, like Wookiees, droids, for the first time were through his eyes. So the disrespect of turning him into this kind of like careless, he didn't learn any lessons type character feels like a slight against us. And that's why this feels like they really care about the fans. Now, it's some of the most fun storytelling, in my opinion, with some more surprises that I don't even want to mention, just from like in the middle of some of the other episodes. The episodes are so dense and so much happens that you might see 3 or 4 different exciting story moments per episode. And these characters that they're introducing are going to be the new Boba Fett in 10, 12, 20 years down the line, because 1 or 2 of them is going to happen to stand out in a way that some kid who's like 12 is like, yo, that's the coolest character I've ever seen. I want to be just like the guy with the one eye visor thing. Like, you never know. You really never know. Some kid is going to want to be like the Tusken Raider trainer who's training Boba with the staff. Like, some kid is going to want to be that person for Halloween or a cosplay contest. And that's the beautiful part of it. Like in Star Wars, we should be able to see ourselves in one of the aspects. Sometimes we feel like we want to be the main character, but then other times we just want to slag off like Han Solo. And other times we just want to be a part on the outskirts. Or maybe we want to be a Wookiee and explore that terrain. So this allows us to experience that in the same way that hopefully the video games allow us to experience these same things. But the massive part about this episode 6, the part that shocked me beyond belief with another spoiler is, oh man, when I tell you that really shocked me, the crazy explosion, the fact that even though it was right in front of our face, it still felt like it came out of nowhere. This is premier storytelling. Big shout out to Jon Favreau, the co-writer whose name I'm blanking on at the moment. Just some of my favorite storytelling I've ever seen on television. Ludwig Göransson, one of the dopest producers, who also did the score for Mandalorian. He's done score for Tenet. He was the producer for Childish Gambino when he was coming up for years and years. The Childish Gambino Grammy hit, Ludwig Göransson wrote the actual music for it. An incredible producer, and he's doing Star Wars. Like, it doesn't get better than this. So I love the interconnected world. There isn't a world I would rather be than here right now, which means that it's going to be one of those shows that I'm going to revisit on multiple occasions. I love the acting. I love the direction. I love the direction. There's no fat on these scripts. Everything is just, you go from high moment to emotional relevant moment to plot device moment to high moment to emotionally relevant moment, and on and on. There's so much texture in the world. There's so much depth and just insight. If anybody really wanted to know how to write dialogue, I would point him towards shows like this, because it understands what a lot of the shows, where the real quippy shows like Billions understand, and that's, you don't really say you don't really say exactly what's on your mind or what you need. You talk around things, you hint, you speak with subtext, and this show has that in spades. The scene with Timothy Oliphant in the beginning of, I don't even know if it was the beginning, but it blew me away. And his delivery was such an incredible callback, because when Kate Bane came, he didn't say his catchphrase. He didn't say, think about it, because he didn't know if he actually had the jump. He could tell that a real gunslinger had came to town. So this is one of the best episodes on the best series on television right now. So if you're a sci-fi fan, if you're a science fantasy fan, if you're a fantasy fan, if you're a Star Wars fan, this is your show. So I don't know what this playlist is going to be called, but it's going to be a fun one. So thanks again for watching Wild with Wilder. I'm Ilex Wilder. Had to do some Star Wars talk with the Book of Boba Fett, one of the best shows on TV that I have ever seen. So be sure to like the video and subscribe, because that will really help the channel go far. A couple of things to remember. Make sure that you follow some of my playlists. The Road to Blue Chip is where I talk about kind of like my challenge of trying to get some blue chip pieces on the VV platform. That about sums it up. Like, VV is one of those things where it's still really, really new. It's still really exciting. So definitely check out my Road to Blue Chip playlist so that you can kind of see how I'm doing, where I'm at, what moves I'm trying to make. And I'll be as candid and transparent as I possibly can. So thanks again for watching. This has been Wild with Wilder. Peace.